Wow, good evening. Clive, Adam, and everyone involved in making this wonderful event happen. The board members of NIF UK, ladies and gentlemen. I want to say that it's an honor for me to be here in such a large event. I am not new to NIF. I actually served for a couple of years on the international board of NIF in the early 2000s. And I believe my first ever speech before an audience like yours was in Washington, D.C. I stepped in for my mom, who addressed the NIF United States in Washington, I believe in 97 or 8. So I'm really honored to be here tonight together with the awardees of the Human Rights Awards that you are issuing here or honoring tonight. I'm also very appreciative of the fact that you're remembering my father and inviting me here to share my thoughts with you. I want to say to Sama and Eli that I apologize, and I'm looking forward to learn about your contribution and the reasons you were awarded the Human Rights Award. And I want to say, with your permission, a few words of my good friend Gadi. Gadi, who I have known for now almost 20 years. Dr. Gadi Gvaryahu led the most relevant struggles pertaining to the phenomena leading to the assassination. The assassination that we are, as we said, we're remembering here tonight. First, Gadi played a crucial role in the struggle against the disgraceful publication called Torat HaMelech, a book that retroactively legitimizes the Hebron massacre of '94 and proactively, on a day-to-day, justifies many illegal, unjust activities called Tag Mechir. Gadi is also the founder of the only synagogue in the world named after my late father. And the idea wasn't a very easy concept to drive forward in the tense Jewish secular versus observant antagonism in the post-assassination era. Gadi's Tag Meir organization is indeed a beacon of light in this very grim environment, and I really am thankful for your recognition of Gadi's work and for Gadi himself. And again, I want to congratulate the 3 honorees, and I'm looking forward to learn about the other 2. Ladies and gentlemen, like every year, come the anniversary of my late father, I'm posed with the question, what is the legacy of Yizhak Rabin? And my short answer is making Israel sustainable. Israel's sustainability depends on numerous facets, certainly many more than just the borders and its military strength. As my father so aptly said in his inauguration speech in June of '92, security is not measured just by number of tanks, fighter planes, and missile boats. Security is measured by one's education, housing, welfare, the street he grows on, and his neighborhood. True, my father's legacy is not presented in a multi-volume dust-collecting publication. It portrays itself in actions, in facts on the ground, in treaties, in dialogue with former enemies, in shaping new realities in almost every aspect of Israel's life. A recently done comparative analysis study shows that in nearly every aspect, the government my father led in '92 to '95 still maintains leadership. Leadership in increase in education, healthcare, and education budgets, leadership in dealing with housing shortages, dealing with infrastructure and mass transportation, decrease in unemployment, in efforts to decrease inequality between Jews and non-Jews, Jews and Jews. That's my father's legacy, and it's alive, and it's a living legacy. Imagine Israel without the new terminal in Ben Gurion. Imagine Israel without Highway 6. So forgive me for being intolerant with those who say my father did not leave a legacy. What can be more fitting legacy than in eradicating the severe housing shortages stemming from the massive former Soviet Union immigration in mere 3 years? No number of volumes can match 50% decrease in unemployment again in 2-3 years. When we speak of human rights, we clearly speak about human dignity. Dignity arises from basic needs such as housing, healthcare, welfare, and continues with education, respected employment and employment conditions, and ends with equality, real and perceived. Most of all, it is the sense of belonging. I believe every one of these aspects was fundamentally changed and improved when my father was in power, significantly advancing towards the ultimate self-fulfillment phase of morality, creativity, and decrease in prejudices. With your permission, I'm going to be blatant. When my father took office, he transformed the country. He led it to emerge from a lost decade, the 80s, in which Israel was totally consumed by a senseless war, economic disaster, and the Intifada. In 1992, the country needed a turnaround. Similarly, the achievements of the past 20 years pale compared to what has been achieved in a mere 3 years. In response to a unique geopolitical situation that presented itself in the early 90s, my father was poised to leverage it towards the vision of sustainable Israel. Professor Asa Kasher defined my father's legacy, and I'm quoting. First of all, a unique personal biography of the son's generations receiving the torch from the founding fathers and mothers, and remarkably executing the mission. From serving as RL Division Commander in 1948 through Chief of General Staff of the 6 Days War, Rabin's legacy is the thrive for peace. From young soldier to prime minister, his revulsion from war is evident. Finally, Rabin's legacy is the fight for democracy. Rabin was assassinated in the midst of a political dispute vastly deviating from the acceptable moral principle of democratic rule. So according to Kasher, there are 3 layers of the legacy. The moral imperative for defense, security, and sacrifice. I'm quoting my father, "I have more friends on the wall than amongst the living." He said 2 days before his assassination in a memorial service for the fallen IDF Armored Corps soldiers. The second layer is peace. The absolute moral imperative of the state to achieve peace with the neighboring nations and peoples. Peace as the ultimate guarantee for security from war and terror, so well exemplified by his saying on the midst of the 6 Days War, facing the Western Wall, saying it should aptly be named the Wall of Peace. The third layer of the legacy is the imperative for democratic restraint. The moral obligation of the citizen to properly restrain, to restrain each power available to oneself. Restraint of expression is also a restraint of strength. Words create ideas, that create plans, that create deeds, that create dangers, that create destruction. What can better characterize this damage imperative than the fact that Rabin was assassinated by an unrestrained Jew, Orthodox, nationalistic extremist? There are a few other points I would like to characterize that differentiate my father. He absolutely believed in the right of self-defense, and yes, even the preemptive strike as means of self-defense. But he never condoned the use of excessive power, surely not the abuse of it. He was committed to and significantly contributed to the military strength of Israel, but never blinded by it, understanding and accepting the limitations of sheer power as means to achieve strategic goals. Like many leaders, he was sensitive to what's being said about him, his policies, and his country. Often subject to bitter criticism, yet he never entertained the thought of limiting freedom of speech, not for individuals, not for the media, nor for the NGOs. In his struggles to the leadership roles and as a leader, to change and seek breakthroughs, he never sought additional powers or alternative political structures. A true democratic leader. The agony of the Arab-Israeli conflict is that for the better part, we all know what the final status agreement is going to look like. Maybe some minor changes, but we are failing to reach them. Thus, I believe it is more an issue of process rather than substance. And since I'm not busy getting elected, there is no hope for Israel from the sea to the Jordan Valley, controlled by Jewish minority. That's not the Zionist vision. There is no hope to end the conflict without a Palestinian state. There is no Palestinian state without regional arrangements. Arrangements that provide us the security we need, the economic and diplomatic benefits in return for the necessary compromises we must make. And finally, there is no hope for regional arrangements without a serious Israeli response to the Arab Peace Initiative, an initiative presented well over a decade ago and never responded to by Israel. There is no hope to stabilize the internal divides between us, between Jews and non-Jews, between Jews amongst themselves, and reduce the levels of violence without drawing a clear vision that we can all march towards together. Only that will generate the necessary resources to deal with the rising issues of poverty, healthcare, education, rule of law, environment. Until such agreements are reached, we will not be able to divert the resources needed for these priorities. Finally, we need the leadership that will stop dwelling on the here and now, on how just we are, on how good and pretty we speak with ourselves. Is it possible? Yes. We saw former prime ministers like Menachem Begin, Ariel Sharon, and Ehud Olmert reinvent themselves, each in his own way, when the buck stopped with them. Over the past few years, I've met and spoke with many in the Middle East. I saw with my own eyes and heard with my own ears that we do have partners. And yes, I also know we have enemies, bitter enemies, common enemies to our partners. And precisely for that, we have to put up the strategic defenses. I have no illusions. Change takes time. Certainly the current situation is discouraging, and the atmosphere in Israel is anything but conducive for such change. But then again, most changes do materialize in the aftermath of chaos. In the recently released and highly recommended documentary movie, Rabin in his own words, my father says, in a previously unnoticed and untypical statement, Israel may have lost the prime minister with a better chance than any other of advancing peace and preventing war. This was in 1977 when he was forced to resign. In 1995, we lost him for good, and very likely lost the opportunity. Let's not allow this prophecy become true. Thank you very much.